Greetings, everyone. My name is Guy Dauncey, and I am the co-chair of the West Coast Climate Action Network. There's a whole bunch of us been working for a year and a half to make this thing happen. And I want to start tonight just by honoring the reality of the indigenous world in which we settlers live. The 5,000 to 15,000 years of tradition, of stewardship, of complexity, of culture. And our task is to listen and to learn, which is the beginning of all respect and reconciliation. And this is a vast story. There's a lifetime of learning to be had here. Tonight's, did I share that screen or did I miss it?
You're not showing your screen yet.
There you go, isn't that clever of me? I'll go back and share that again. This is the richness of indigenous cultures across British Columbia, the huge variety of peoples. We have so much to learn. So tonight's assembly, we are having a initial welcome process. We're going to breakout groups just to meet each other personally. Then Sebastian will talk us through what we know of what BC's climate action groups are currently doing. We'll then be working in breakout groups so that we'll work together based on topic interests, whether it's a shared interest in active transportation or stopping pipelines. Then we'll discuss together, not in breakout groups, what it takes to create an effective climate action assembly, and then some closing thoughts. In other times, we might have had a whole weekend to get to know each other and build relationships. So tonight's just the beginning. It'll take a while to bring the whole BC climate movement together. So we're all in this together, learning what works. We might not, tonight you might feel frustrated. We couldn't get this done, we couldn't get that done. We're working within the limitations of Zoom, and we hope to do this quite frequently. And we have a next one planned for the same Wednesday in July. So we're all coming from this place of extraordinary belly-heaving disturbance around the reality. This is all data from this week. Extraordinary heating in the Arctic, extraordinary melting in the Antarctic. 100 million Americans have to stay indoors because of extreme heat. Mexico City having a freak hailstorm in the middle of June, hail up to 3 feet deep in some places. Meanwhile, this week's news as well, funding for climate disasters has jumped more than 800% in 20 years. That's the increased cost. Active wildfires burning over 1 million acres in America. And if those of you have seen the videos of the flooding in Yellowstone Park, it's just absolutely, dramatic, complete, huge thing in Yellowstone Park. Last year, we had the all-time record heat record. In Canada, we had Lytton burning to the ground. We had the heat dome. Then we had the massive flooding in Abbotsford on the highways right across from Vancouver, right across to, the interior. So in response, we have this proliferation of activities and initiatives by, we have 223 member organizations in WECAN. And it sometimes feels chaotic and disorganized. All these different things are happening. And we want to try and create coherence and bring it all together. I'm not going to read through all of those things. And these are stuff happening now, this present moment. Also, there's more, just last week, there's current actions to emphasize the role of the Royal Bank of Canada in financing Coastal GasLink pipeline up in the Wet'suwet'en lands. The active campaign on the golf course in Ontario, where they actually intervened with a game of golf because it was sponsored by Royal Bank of Canada, and they disrupted the golf game for quite a while. Today's launch at 12 noon of Sue Big Oil by the West Coast Environmental Law to actually get a movement going when municipalities would actually contribute money to put a big lawsuit together to get damages from the oil industry. We have the launch a few days ago by the CAPA, the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, to make fossil fuel advertisements illegal, including car advertisements for fossil fuel cars. We have 350.org and others organizing a big day of action on June 29th to emphasize the need for just transition and to stop this endless climate delay. It's the anniversary of the heat dome last year. Meanwhile, we had the trial of Tim Tuccaro on Monday of this week, and the gathering on the steps of the court, a lot of people in Vancouver. There's Tim up his tree. He was actually sentenced today to 30 days in jail. Otherwise, he'd be with us tonight. That's him speaking. And that's the Canadian Association of Physicians wearing their hospital, white coats, they call it there. I'm not sure what the name for it, to show up their professionals. This is a health crisis. It's a global health crisis. In London, meanwhile, health professionals got together on Downing Street to actually, outside, I think the Treasury it was, to emphasize the role of investment in fossil fuels. We have to, for health's sake, stop fossil fuel financing. And in London, I'm going to press this link here, and I might need to share it. I need to stop sharing and start sharing again quite rapidly, because I want to share this new thing with you, which is this one here. Sound up. Hang on a sec. Let me find a way to stop that. Where is it? So I can't find a way to stop this thing.
We can't see it, Guy.
There we go.
Okay.
That was fun. I'm going to go back to sharing now. Get my act back together here. Got carried away there. Share the screen. Slideshow, stop my present slide. That was just an example of, that was Lloyd's of London are the prime insurers for fossil fuel industries in London. That's creativity of protesting at work. And that was 62,000 views, just shortly after it was done, right? So just briefly in wrapping up here, if we're watching a sports game, you can be optimistic or pessimistic. You're an observer. If you're a player, as we all are on this call, we're determined or defeated. So that's the game that matters, is whether we're determined or defeated. So what do we need to achieve? Ideally, by 2030, BC has become a global leader. The Greens, NDP, and First Nations all working together. We have a close to 100% reduction in greenhouse gases, 25% reduction in overall trips, Indigenous land rights being honored and respected, fracking and pipelines all shut down, all old growth forests being protected, all clear-cut logging ended, 30% of BC's land and water being protected, and we're inspiring jurisdictions all over the world. So back to the Assembly, I'm now going to pass over to Sebastian to basically give a quick overview of what our current BC climate action groups are doing. And back to you, Sebastian.
Guy, did you want to do the breakout rooms for people to get to know each other before we
Oh, I forgot that entirely. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, it's breakout rooms next. And these are small groups of 4, I think we agreed, purely to get to know each other one by one. So Sebastian will assign you randomly, and it's a chance for, I think, how long to be assigned, Sebastian? I had to shut down I
think we have 10 minutes on the agenda right now.
So 10 minutes. So no need to take notes, just take chance to listen to each other and get to know, share what work you're doing, and start building relationships. And I'll leave it to you, Sebastian, to put us in the breakout groups.
Okay, you're about to get warped into a breakout room.
Is everyone back, Sebastian, as far as you can see? Okay, then I'll hand over to Sebastian to share the work we're doing on tracking and tagging with all the climate action groups in British Columbia.
Great. So one of, obviously as like a network of groups, our main purpose really is to connect and amplify the work of our member groups. Sorry, I've got a lot of things open here. People see my screen? A nod?
Yeah.
Yes, great. So folks might have seen this page before. This is our member organizations page where we list our members. Previously, we had a Google map that just showed sort of pinpricks where the different groups are. We could sort of consider that the alpha version of that map, and now we're sort of on the beta version of this map where we're getting a lot more interesting data that can be visualized and hopefully be useful for connecting groups together. We already did a bunch of reporting back on how the tagging went in our big survey project. So some of you may have received a sort of medium length survey where we asked what your group was involved in. We didn't get 100% participation in that survey, unfortunately, and I will be going after those groups who haven't done it yet to hopefully get 100% participation. But we were asking sort of what kinds of initiatives that groups are involved in. And so for tonight, we've selected sort of 10 different tags that we thought were a good basis for talking about sort of shared action amongst groups in BC. So I'm just going to demonstrate the features of this map, just understanding that this is still sort of a beta map, and we will be increasing some of this functionality, especially around the tagging, right? We have maybe 90 or 100 different tags in our database, but we just have these 10 broken out right now for this portion of the map. So we see a map here of British Columbia, in fact, the world, if we zoom out, and each of these dots represent different members. So we do have some federal groups that are based in out east in our network, as well as a group in the Yukon. And then we do have one American group that's joined us as well down in Seattle, I think, or maybe just north of Seattle somewhere. Regardless, this map of organizations you can interact with directly, for instance, by just clicking on a dot, and you'll get what groups that dot represents. So in this case, we have Smithers Climate Action and Energy Alternatives, two sort of organizations with the same location. We can click somewhere else, for instance, and get something like this, Transition Kamloops Network. And then we also have website information. In our database, we do have additional information about groups that we're trying to consider what we want to publish and what we don't. We certainly don't want to be publishing people's private emails, for instance, to contact them if they're not looking for that. So as we sort of advance with the system, we'll have more and more information as we sort of are safe to release it. But the really big interesting thing here are these tags. So let's say you're interested in active transportation. If you click on active transportation, it'll just show you the groups that are doing active transportation. This is a pretty cool feature because then you can sort of zoom into your local area. You can see there's a cluster of groups here in the Lower Mainland who are working on active transportation. And we can sort of click on them and just see what those groups are. So here we have Force of Nature North Shore is indicated as doing some active transportation campaigns. We can also see, for instance, what's this? We got 3 groups here coming out of, I think, in the UBC area, Green Technology Education Center, Greenpeace Vancouver, and Green Seeds Music Society. So you can see the power of this tagging. If, for instance, you wanted to maybe take a look at a group that was doing, for instance, both agriculture and buildings, if you have both of those selected, it'll filter it down to just those groups that are doing those specific tasks. So some of this is not as useful as other things. So I'm not sure why you would want to specifically try and find agriculture and building groups, but if that was sort of your thing. But as we go forward, we'll include all of those different tags that include things like scope. So for instance, groups that are doing municipal work, or groups that are doing provincial work, or groups that are doing federal work. And then that way you'll be able to combine tags a bit more effectively. So for instance, if you want to see who's doing energy work at the municipal level, if you're interested in district energy services or district energy projects, that would be one thing. If you want to see sort of power projects that are directed at the provincial government, you would select provincial and energy. So this is sort of the system that we have going here. And of course, it's going to be improved as we go on. We really want to know what groups want out of this kind of a program, though. So it's not so much useful if we know all the information. We really want our member groups to be using it. So after this meeting, you'll be getting a sort of a little mini survey with the email that you registered to join this meeting. And it'll ask you just a couple of questions on sort of features that you might want to see in a map like this and what you want to see prioritized, just to sort of guide us in how we're designing this thing to make sure that it's useful for the end user. And that email will also include a link to this and a link to other information that we're going to be sharing tonight. So that's it for just a quick share of this sort of exciting new mapping system that we have here. And hopefully it'll be super useful for groups to collaborate.
That's great. So before I realized we missed out one thing. We were going to do a poll on how many are active in a climate action group. Do you want to, have you got that ready to do, Sebastian? I forgot to do it earlier.
Yes, it's
there we go. So are you part of a climate action group? Yes or no, but I want to join one, or no. We just wanted to get so this is looking really positive. So almost everyone here is part of a climate action group. This is what we want for this assembly, because this is to bring the climate action groups together. But we do have 4 people who know, but I want to join one, and 5 or 6 who may be in a different kind of environmental group, which is not a climate action group. I mean, we're totally welcome for that. So I'll do that and I'll share the results. So that's what it looks like. And with that, I think we're going to go into the second bunch of breakout groups, right? Based on those tags. Is that right, Sebastian?
Yeah, I think you were going to explain what the groups are meant for.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be getting into them, yes.
We're going to invite you to, I'll let Sebastian explain which group you want to join. We're going to have these 10 groups, and we'll have 20 minutes in each group. And at the beginning, we invite someone to choose to be the facilitator for the group to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak. We'll probably have about 7 or 8 or 10 people in each group. Someone to take notes as well. And either the facilitator or the note taker will then do a brief 1-minute report back when we get together. And it's a chance to sort of share what is the work you're doing around buildings or around active transportation or around, stopping pipelines together. Is that, let me see if there's any things in the chat, if there's any questions around all that. Or just raise your hand if you have any questions right now. I'm just going to go to view full gallery. If you want to shove your hand up, if you've got a quick question about anything, use the reactions button to put your hand up like that. And well, if there's only 1 or 2 questions, failing that, we'll jump straight into the breakout groups.
Maybe not so straight. I'll just give a couple more instructions. So yes. I'm just putting in the chat a Google document. This Google document just links to a number of other Google documents that are each associated with the different breakout rooms. So the hope here is that when you join your breakout room, one of the people who's willing to do some notes will jot down some notes in there. And if your group wants to sort of keep in touch to touch base on or maybe work on a project together, just include your email in those notes. There's a section there, and then we'll make sure to send an email to connect you all together. So what I'm about to do now is I'm going to be opening up 10 breakout rooms that are based on 10 different themes. And the ask is that you select which breakout room you want to join based on sort of the interests of yourself and the group that you're involved in. I do see that there is one hand, so maybe we'll do that question before we get into the breakout rooms.
Catherine, unmute yourself. Quick question.
Just wanted to note that it says I don't have access to type on the document. So if you're intending for us to take notes, can you open that so everybody has access to that, please?
So that initial document that I shared, you can't write in, but if you click on the links, those are editable.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying.
Great,
so what I'm noticing from the Google Doc is only 29 people have clicked on it at the moment. So every one of you needs to go to the chat and scroll up a little bit because there's been several messages.
Guy, we have about 40 in that document right now, and people are probably also navigating away. So I'm hoping that somebody's going to be in every group with access to it, and I'll be dropping the direct links into each of those breakout rooms.
Okay, so the numbers are increasing now, but that's where you'll find your group. And so
I'm going to open the groups now. You'll have a dialog box where you'll be able to select one of the 10 groups to join. So remember, join the group that your own climate group is interested in or that you are interested in. And open in now.
Go for it. Groups end so abruptly. My goodness, you're on mid-thought and then suddenly you're gone, right? Let me look at our agenda here. Wait till everyone's got back. So we were going to take 1 minute each for each group to report back. Is everyone back yet? I think so, yes. So let's just jump right in. Group number 1. Can you rate, who's representing group number 1? Put your hand up and you'll come to you'll immediately know who you are. Raise your hand in the bottom thing like that. Group number 1. Who's reporting back on you?
I forget which group I was in, Guy. Which one were we in?
It wasn't 1. I think it was 7.
You were in 3, Sharon.
Okay, thanks, Fireweed.
Why don't we just jump right in? Sharon, group 3 do a report back first. So Sharon, why don't you jump in, unmute and take a minute to report back on our group?
Okay, group number 3 consisted of Fireweed, Mike Nestor, Eleanor Boyd, myself, and Guy Dauncey. And we talked a lot about the use of animals in food production in terms of regenerative agriculture. There's lots of shared goals in terms of food, agriculture, and climate among people in our group and the groups that we're involved with. Regenerative farming in different forms, not necessarily with cattle. Factory farm chickens being advertised as local is not necessarily well-raised food. And Eleanor indicated that in World War II, the first thing they did was eliminate cattle so they could raise more food on the land. New Zealand has just put a methane tax on cattle. And this is one of the more immediate ways in which we can reduce greenhouse gases. This is about taking urgent action based on science. And Eleanor indicated there is a lot of opposition to getting rid of meat. Factory farming is the main problem.
That's great. Who wants to volunteer to do another group? Let's do it at random. Who's ready to do a minute report back on their group? Don't all jump. Unmute yourself and just
I
call.
can jump in. I'm with group 2, the municipal group.
Okay, Alea.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Alea Boisvert. I live in Gibsons, BC on the Sunshine Coast on traditional unceded territories of the Squamish and Seashell Nations. And we had a pretty big group, probably like 10 to 15, so I won't name everybody, but thanks for being there. Really great discussion. Mostly we're focusing on introductions and which groups were represented there. And just to say there's like so much enthusiasm, especially in the lead up to the municipal elections that are going to be happening in October of this year. Some local groups who were talking about how they work with developers, others who are who have been developing tools around effective communication at the municipal level. Some of the groups represented were Force of Nature, Lead Now, Greater Victoria Acting Together. West Coast Environmental Law apparently can offer advice to anyone who's free advice to anyone who's interested, especially related to gas and municipalities. Stand.org, Project Drawdown, My Sea to Sky, Future Ground Network, folks representing the Health Authority and bringing a really important social justice lens.
Time's up. 1 minute. Thanks, Alea. Is it Alea or Alea?
Alea.
Alea. Who's next with another group to report back?
I'll go.
Andrea, yes.
Yes, this might be a mishmash because I totally forgot to put my notes in the Google Doc, but I can do that after. So we had we had 5 people from Vancouver, Toronto, Oak Bay, Denman Island, and Port Alberni. And we had a range of topics that we were interested in. Like Margate, for example, is interested in creating a think tank to work on and living in the same building. So that's where her concept of the buildings came from, was a group of people from diverse backgrounds. I think Robert and I were focusing on step codes and are concerned that the province should mandate higher step codes, especially for large buildings where landlords and construction people can actually afford to do that. And I raised the topic of the new low carbon energy systems bylaws that Jane Devonshire knows all about. So you can ask her. In our community, Oak Bay, they voted for 4 climate actions, and one of them was making retrofits and new buildings way more energy efficient.
Time's up.
One more thing.
One more thing.
Really concerned about renewable natural gas.
Yes. Who's next? Thank you, Andrea. Another group report back.
Sure, I'll go quickly.
Well,
representing group 7, which is effectively message-based. How do we communicate? We had a very large group, probably about 20 people in it. And really, we didn't get into the nuts and bolts very much. Because we're not talking about a specific issue, the question is simply, how do we communicate the issues? The time we were just starting to get into some meaty stuff, and just in general, a fantastic group of humans, and really stoked to be part of this team.
Thanks, Whelm. Yeah, that was 20. That's a big team. Who's next? Eddie? No. Which group?
Hi, I'm Eddie. I was in group 8 on opposing fossil fuels. My personal contribution is that we should never use the N-word to describe fossil gas, which is severely unnatural. I was really impressed by all the people who had put their freedom on the line and gone to prison, or gone to jail, I guess. And so many people from different groups. There was First Things First in the Okanagan, a lot of people opposing TMX. Laurie, who I actually read your letter to the BC Utilities Commission, very inspirational. I'm actually an intervener in the BC Utilities Commission against Fortis BC myself. So I had some firm words against their lawyer in the last hearing. Yeah, people protecting orcas on Pender Island, very worried about that. The success of Port Moody signing the nuclear the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. Climate convergence, up in Powell River, wondering how they can make an impact from where they are. Yeah, lots of opposition to fracked gas. Climate Action Hub, launching Sue Big Oil, which happened earlier today, which is where I found out about this event. Yeah, and another individual working on a divestment campaign, and maybe got $10 billion divested. So
great.
Lots of people, lots of successes.
Great.
I'm really excited.
Thanks, Eddie. That's just great. Sorry to be so rushed, but we need to have time for the final part of this. Which group's next? I'm not keeping track. Sebastian, I hope you're keeping track of which groups haven't gone yet.
I think Anik was going to do group 6. He was our reporter.
Anik, can you unmute and share?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we also, fantastic group. We also mostly got through introductions and people's concern. We were the policy group. We had some discussion about there being only 2 environmental acts in British Columbia, and then the importance of defining in the word environment for these acts. We had someone that talked about their work with health and climate policy, one of our physicians. We had someone who brought up that we have concerns that BC doesn't have good data, and we need better data on everything from forest, waste to hydro. So we didn't specifically get into policy, but we had a teacher that's part of a group, and they want to approach the board to include climate crises as part of their mandates. We talked about Fortis BC and some of the propaganda that's out there and all kinds of other things, but it was quite quick. I don't know if anybody else in the group has anything to add. But
don't invite them, the time will run out.
All right.
That's great. That's bang on a minute. Thank you, Anik.
You're welcome.
Tara.
Yeah, so we were with the transit and active transportation. I think we combined ourselves as we found there were only 2-3 of us. So there was Larry, who is with the Citizens Climate Lobby in Regina, and he's advocating for energy transition. They're working on energy transition, free transit for youth, and actually free transit for everyone. And I think a lot of us on the call were actually, pushing for free transit for everyone. And I think Larry was also doing projects on reducing energy poverty as well. And of course, there was Nathan, who has been an advocate since he was in UBC for the last 50 years. And he is going to present to the BC Legislature Committee about the 2023 budget. Eric is with Let's Ride Better Transit Victoria, and he pushed for reallocating street space to public transit. And one of my campaign platforms is for accelerated sidewalk infrastructure as well as segregated bike lanes. That's me, Tara. And has my time run out?
Yep, your time's run out, Tara.
Okay, Keith Wiley, he was pushing for, again, pushing councillors for an intercity transit. So I wanted to.
And Tara's running to be a Green City councillor in Burnaby this October. 2 or 3 groups still to come. Who's not gone yet? I know I'm rushing this through, but that's live on Zoom. Which groups have not yet reported back?
I think nature-based solutions and the group around the economy would be the two.
Anyone in nature-based solutions group want to report back? Did you choose someone? Did you get that far? Or can anyone in that group unmute and let us know if you. Otherwise, we'll roll right on. No report backs from those 2 groups? Seemingly not. So I think, Sebastian, we should roll right on. And what we're rolling on to is actually part 4, which is creating an effective climate assembly. And we were 10 minutes behind schedule on this one, but never mind. So the question for us is, this is the first time we try to do an assembly like this. I mean, how do you coordinate 223 different climate action groups around the province, each of which has got between 10 and 10,000 members? And yet we know we need to do it, but we don't know how to do it. This is our first attempt. And the floor is literally going to be fully open for anyone to contribute ideas now. So if you just have thoughts around the way we organize these assemblies to make them better, more efficient, different time of day, longer, whatever, raise your hand and share your thoughts, because we need everyone's collective genius here. Keith Wiley's saying, damn effective assembly so far. One of the realities of Zoom is that no one wants to be on Zoom for more than an hour and a half. So please take the opportunity to share your thoughts. You know, we got another one planned for Wednesday, June the 13th. Then we're going to take a break in August. And in September, when we meet up for assembly, we'll have a big focus on the provincial, on the municipal elections. So Arden, can you unmute and share your organizational thoughts? And then Whelm.
Well, first of all, just a great first effort and much appreciated. I think one of the keys is that the breakout rooms are invaluable and probably should be limited in number and have more time so people can get to know one another and discuss. And I love the idea of creating a public bulletin board where a summary of the discussions from the breakout rooms could appear, as well as another sort of communal document. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. Well, you'll go.
So just like to make a quick correction, Guy. I said June 13th. He, of course, meant July 13th is the next one. I agree very much with Heather Bates in the comments that assemblies that are dedicated to specific topics, so 90 minutes just for a topic. And I'd also like to just put it out there to the group that I feel like this is an assumption that 90 minutes is the most that these assemblies can be. I've taken part in many multi-hour Zoom meetings. And so I don't want to make that assumption that 90 minutes is the cap on these. So I would like to not make that assumption and put that out there. Maybe that's part of the survey question that's going to be asked later, but I would vote for longer assemblies.
Okay, that's great. Lisa and Peter, or Lisa.
Well, it's Peter, yeah. So I just wonder if it's a little ambitious. There's such a divergence of interest here. I was impressed by that map that Sebastian showed where we could get like-minded groups. And I wondered about starting with smaller like-minded group forums or congresses. It just seems very rushed and very spread thin.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you.
Alison, your thoughts?
Yeah, that was kind of where I was going. Heather and a few others posted in the chat that perhaps in the future they could be on specific topics. So we have a transportation assembly, and all groups that want to work on that issue should and could come. While we had people here, I just wanted to mention that we do have a Zoom account as we can. We're still working out the details of how that would work to share with other groups. But if groups connected tonight and they want to reconnect and they don't have the Zoom platform to do that, I'll put my email in the chat and just let me know. And from we can help provide that space in between provincial assemblies.
And I just want to jump in there for 1 second. Not only is it just the Zoom, but it is the webinar module of Zoom that we have access to, which is the expensive one, which is the one you don't want to pay for yourself. So,
yeah. Eddie, you're up.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is great. Ever since I heard about the French Climate Assembly, I've been wanting to do one of these. So I think it's really effective. I did the 350 organizing call, and you guys are knocking it out of the park compared to that. You know, one thought I have, I use the lean manufacturing process in my business, and it's been so successful that my business sort of runs itself, and I have like a full-time climate activism role. So, you know, like I'd love to, you know, get together and with the organizers and brainstorm how to use some like maybe business processes to make this really productive. And yeah, I really appreciate this, like maybe more often or regular, but just making sure that we're using the outputs effectively. Yeah.
Fantastic. Can you put your email for us in the chat so we can identify you with that on lean manufacturing, lean assemblies, whatever we call it, approaches. Stephen, the floor is yours, Stephen Shepherd.
Yes, you know, really useful. Thanks, Guy and the group for doing all of this. Just a quick thought. I'm assuming that in terms of improving the assemblies, we are talking primarily about sort of how to share information, interact, you know, not reinvent wheels, all that good stuff, which is hugely important. And it is, you know, a bit chaotic at the moment out there. I just would ask the question, and I'm certainly interested in working with other people on this. If there is also a goal of the assembly or the collective of WeCan to take this wider voice and use it to influence government, influence policy, influence other groups through scaling up of effective techniques. I think, well, that was something you were kind of alluding to in the chats that we had in Group 7. So I'm just wondering if that is also part of the objective ultimately, or should we be looking at that to sort of use the collective weight of these assemblies, not just for sharing information with those who are there, but influencing those who are not there.
So I'll jump in quickly, because when we set up WeCan, it was deliberately to support, promote, and endorse all existing member groups. And I shared that list of the goals, you know, ideally 100% reduction in emissions by 2030. That absolutely requires influencing the Green Party, the NDP, First Nations, all of us together, so we're getting on the same page to do that. Yes, very much. Toby, the floor is yours.
Quick comments, breakout rooms, I would suggest less than 8 people. Otherwise, no people get enough chance to speak. But they are awesome tools. Yeah,
with this topic-based one, we didn't have a means of pre-knowing that in advance. So clearly a breakout group of 20 is more like a mini conference, right? Thanks, Toby. Patty, the floor is yours. Can you unmute? Patty Grand.
Hi, thanks, Guy. I would really like to see us take a course of action. And what's concerning me right now is the old growth reaction against by the public. I'm worried that that's going down a bad path right now. And I don't want the issue to be cloaked by the reaction of the public and the, you know, the horrible accident yesterday. So many things are going wrong. I think we need to work on a direction that we want to take. We want to work on how we can do what the government needs us to do, and that is find a way to make it pay for itself, because otherwise they're not going to be listening to us. We can all be talking and we all be talking to each other, but we need someone to be listening.
Yeah. Thanks, Patty. Ted Sheldon, the floor is yours.
Hey, thanks, Guy. A couple of things. One, Laurie, I think, mentioned in the chat, he mentioned about the Climate Caucus, and some of you are probably familiar with the Climate Caucus, but the group that basically gets together, there's a common Climate Caucus meeting, so for example, this Monday, but there are dedicated subgroups that meet at a predetermined collective time every 2 weeks on a certain topic. It could be waste. One group's on waste, one's on transportation, etc. So breaking it out and not necessarily having the assembly at one time only, except for collectively bringing everybody together, maybe bringing forward updates from each of the subgroups on independent times. And then related to that is instead of Zoom, well, in addition to or instead of Zoom, there's the Slack. You may have heard of the Slack network communication tool. That's a way for a big network to communicate kind of in and amongst themselves. So just two quick thoughts.
Yeah, we use Slack within our internal teams within WeCan. But
oh, you do? Okay, sorry.
Just for our own internal stuff, yes. Elizabeth, the floor is yours. If you can unmute your camera, whatever the word for it. Elizabeth McJanet, you had your hand up. If not, Elizabeth there. If not, we'll go to Mary Keane. Mary, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I wanted to support Toby in his idea of maybe smaller groups, and also that perhaps if we had some sort of agenda sent ahead of time of what the groups were going to be, so that we would know very clearly where we belonged. And I like the idea of the larger assembly. While I also like the idea of focusing on topics like forests or transportation or whatever and having an assembly on that, I like the idea of having us all come together, because I don't think we want to mirror the silos that people are in the current modernist mode that has gotten us here. So I just wanted to put that in.
Yeah, and that is our challenge, because it's very easy to get into a silo when you're all talking buildings together and you're so busy you haven't got time to think about what's happening on transportation, and therefore not supporting each other as well.
Well, yeah, and it feeds in because transportation and buildings,
they're very
have
linked
stuff to do with each other. So
yeah. Roger, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think having working groups and topics would be useful, possibly with separate meetings, and then we would convene once a month to review what's going on. Thank you.
And Elizabeth McJanet, you're with us.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, one thing that I have gleaned in the past 6 months after the various events that have happened is that so many of these action plans that are put in place and that can be, everyone sort of sits back and says, job well done, for however many years it takes to put together the plan. If there is no funding behind that action plan being executed, then it just fails. Like, you can have the most beautifully documented plan of action, but unless you have somebody boots on the ground who is prepared to ensure and get paid to ensure that that plan gets implemented, it's just a piece of paper.
Yeah. Thanks, Elizabeth. And before I get to you, Eddie, it is a 2 points here. When we founded WeCan, we had all of our initial volunteers formed into interest groups. And we had a lot of people in our climate solutions group, 32 people, and we chose to focus on transport. And by focusing on transport, we then had to forget about all the other topics and things like that. And around funding, in our weekly newsletter, we have a section at the end on grants and all the sources of funding. And I've certainly learned that you'll never get a grant you never applied for. If you actually apply for the grant, and the last 4 grants I've applied for, we have different groups, we have got every one of them. So it can work. And the federal government has just released money for a new round of grant aiding for think tanks and policy wonk groups around climate policy. You'll find the details in the newsletter this Friday. Eddie Dearden, the floor is yours.
Okay, so this is just suggestions for how we could improve this.
Yes.
This is, I'm sort of rehashing what I already said, but just something that's free that we can all do that will make us more effective. Because I just saw that someone in the notes for our group used the N word, natural. I'm going to say it. They said natural gas. I just want to clarify for everyone that in human language, natural means good. You can scream until you're blue in the face for people to stop using natural gas, and you're actually selling it. You're making them want to use it more. Start using fossil gas, eliminate the N word from your vocabulary. That will instantly make you more effective for zero cost.
And in BC, it's fracked fossil gas. Karen, yes.
Thanks. WeCan is such a great connector of so many organizations. My hope is that in these assemblies, we will come up with a direction, and will work on a relationship with the new Minister of the Environment and Climate Change Strategy. They should be meeting with climate organizations on a regular basis. It's ridiculous that there's so many of us, and yet we can't get a meeting with the BC government. And if we can't do that, none of us can do that. So I would love to see us establish a relationship with that ministry, and then we have to decide what we want to communicate. Thank you.
Good point. Leonie, floor is yours.
Thank you. I have something a little bit different to offer in that one of the things that I'm well aware of, because I work in this area of restorative justice, climate justice, and also interested in racial healing, is in looking internally and supporting organizations and groups such as this on how to bring in a care system, so that while we are looking at addressing things like the climate crisis, we're also well aware and being able to foster connection and care, and, for example, be able to respond to impact and conflict. That's one thing I wanted to name. And I'm also interested in supporting diversifying who is involved in the family of looking at climate justice. So expanding it not only in terms of racial diversity, but also those who are from traditionally marginalized communities. So I just wanted to name that. Thank you.
Leonie, where is your Necessary Trouble Collective based?
We're based in Vancouver, and we are basically there as a support offering to address when human relationships break down and then interrupt the idea of direct action or movement. So that's a resource that we can offer to this community in support of climate justice.
And that's fabulous. If maybe we put a pitch to you to maybe your collective to become an organizational member of WeCan.
Certainly open to it.
Okay, no more hands up at the moment. Anyone else want to jump in with thoughts around this? One of the dilemmas that we face is that in WeCan we have one paid staff person, Sebastian, who's also our secretary on the board. So he's doing voluntary work and paid work. The rest of us volunteers are fully stretched. So any new group that's set up, we can offer to facilitate and help with the first 2 meetings. But after that, it's going to have to find its own leadership, because it becomes, well, I'll tell you a personal story. I told my wife I won't do more than 2 evening meetings a week, because she's saying, where are you? We're supposed to be married to you, right? I have to limit the time for evening meetings to keep my marriage together. As Leonie is saying, these things matter at a personal level. So we're really open to new groups forming, and we can help you for the first 2 weeks, first 2 sessions. Sylvia, do you want to jump in? The floor is yours. You're muted.
Yes, thank you. With the suggestion and an example, so I've been part of the BC working group for the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. There are several more people here, like Tara and Jennifer, and I think Sunil I've seen around. So I think the group worked really well. So we have documents supporting this, and we have people that have been there from the beginning. So any new community that is trying to do this in their municipality, like, have the support and documentation they need to then contact their city councilors and so on, and take this to fruition, basically. So like, if we could have similar things, like, there's a lot of motions that each municipality could pass, and it would help this entire movement. And if we could have this, so there's the 2 components, like the documentation, which is really difficult for like each individual to start from the beginning all over again every time. And then a bit of support, like if I have a question, how do I approach my counselor, or like, how do I go about getting this passed? Yeah, like something like that would be really useful. Like, yeah. So I mean, I have several things I've seen interesting in talking with other people, and I'd like to do things to do in my community, but like, I would have to start from scratch. So instead of doing that, having a list of this and then going, okay, like in the next few months, I'm going to focus on this one. And then once I finish it, I'll go to the next one. And I can just jump to each group and I can count on.
And which group are you with, Sylvia?
The BC Working Group for the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty.
Okay, great.
So this is already set up. Like
understood.
Anybody who wants to do that in their municipality, they can just join our group and yeah.
Jeanette.
I was just thinking about what you said about new groups and facilitating them, and then thinking about what Sylvia said. And it seems to me that one of the things that we can really contribute is to link people together, so that instead of having more and more individual groups, we actually have a way of communicating with people that are doing similar things in different areas in the province. And I think that might be something that would be really useful and really helpful.
Yeah, that's what our tagging system is designed for on the website. So I'm going to, at this point, hand it back to Sebastian to talk about our existing groups and the tagging system again. Sebastian, back to you.
Yeah, so with what Sylvia was talking about in terms of providing those sort of initial things that folks need to get groups off the ground, we're sort of already doing that we can with the municipal elections. This is sort of, we've identified it as a big priority this year. Of course, municipalities control about 50% of emissions, and we have the elections coming up in October. So we actually have 2 teams out of our 6 teams that are currently devoted towards the municipal elections. So if you folks are seeing my screen here, we have the website, which has this very stressful countdown for when the election is coming, only 122 days away, which is not very long. But this is one of our teams. This is the local government team. And what we've been doing with the local government team is we've put out resources, and we've also put out a series of 4 roundtables. If you folks haven't seen these roundtables, I would really advise you to. They're really good. We have different guests at each one. It's 4 of them, and they're, you know, how to contest the elections coming up, how to find climate champions who are willing to fight in the elections, tips about sort of organizing during the election, right? So this is one of our main initiatives. One of our other forward-facing teams here is the Climate Solutions team. They've just completed their own series of 4 webinars focused on transportation. Guy mentioned earlier that that team had pivoted towards transportation. So similarly, we have 4 webinars here about different topics about transportation for those of you who are transportation lovers. But this group is now going to be orienting itself toward doing municipal policy stuff in advance of the election. So we would love to have folks on either of those 2 teams working towards the municipal elections this year. I know that the municipal breakout room was about 20 or 22 people. So there's obviously a lot of enthusiasm in that direction. Our other major forward-facing or public-facing team is our Indigenous engagement team. And Indigenous engagement team is also producing some webinars along with Raven Trust in this case. But we also have another major project where we're kind of doing the same thing that we're doing with WeCan, but sort of with the WeCan map, but with First Nations-led climate initiatives. So right now we're developing a similar map that's going to have all that information, filterable. You can see sort of what kinds of initiatives are put on by which band, where their funding sources are and such. And just while I have this here, just a shout out that we are looking for a sort of contractor who would be doing outreach to those different initiatives to help us complete our dashboard. So if you know somebody who might be interested in this or are interested yourself, you can go to the website here under Indigenous engagement to see sort of the sort of qualifications that we're looking for that position. So I'm just going to stop sharing and just throw up a slide with some contact information. I hope that this is the right contact information. So I've already mentioned those 3 forward-facing teams, the Climate Solutions, Local Government, and Indigenous Engagement. You can see these people that you can get in contact with to get involved with those teams. We'll be including information in the email that we send out afterwards, so you don't need to copy this down now. You'll get the information in an email. We also have like back of the office teams. We sort of have these 3 teams that help out with different aspects of what's going on. The members team, which sort of manages that map and our database and recruiting new member organizations. a fundraising team, which does exactly what it says in the lid, and a communications team, which sort of produces the newsletter, the website, and other sort of communication stuff that Weekend does. So we'd love to have you join us on one of these teams if it's something you're interested in. And as I mentioned, with the municipal stuff, that is a big focus for us. So we can put a lot of effort into helping facilitate those meetings and facilitate those connections between groups. So it'd be great if you could join us on any of those teams.
Thanks, Sebastian. So I think we're beginning to wrap up now. I mean, there's so many threads out there that are unresolved. We know that it's inevitable, things we haven't sorted out. We got a huge amount of comments in the chat, which we'll go through, and we'll be sending out an email to everyone who signed up for this. There's twice as many people who signed up as attended, which is normal. So a lot of other people want to come to this. Andrew's saying, what about a Slack channel for Weekend? Well, we have an existing internal Slack channel. All our teams meet for that sort of stuff. I personally watch for what the easiness of overwhelm around some of this stuff. With something we can consider. So I think for wrap up, I'm just going to say we'll be back in touch with resolution of all this stuff. And I'm just going to do one more slide sharing thing, which is that we are 95% financed by donations from individuals and volunteers. We've just launched a thing called 100 Friends of Weekend, asking for 100 people to become monthly donors. We have 10 people so far. We'd love it if more people can be a monthly donor, anywhere from $5 to $20 to $100 a month, whatever you can afford, because we do need that financial support. And we also have a piece around financially around if you get an ICBC rebate but you're driving an electric car and you don't need it because you're not using gasoline, we'd welcome that $110. And finally, we have set a date in advance for the next assembly on Wednesday, July the 13th at 6 p.m. And we'll be discussing internally whether it's another open one like this or whether we choose to make it a topic focused one, such as the municipal elections or something like that. So I'm going to stop sharing now and see if anyone else wants to quickly put their hands up before we wrap up the evening, not following Whelm's rule of that we could go on forever. Let me move to full gallery. Any final thoughts anyone wants to put in? This is a beginning. We've got a lot of work to do. Bob Hackett, do you want to share your camera and share those final thoughts?
Yeah, just want to make sure there's some sort of written summary of this meeting to be available as well as the recorded video. Or is there? Because there's so much information here, it'd be great to have a sort of a summary.
It'll depend on the summaries from the groups. We've got a recorded video, but it clearly doesn't record each group. So each group will depend on whatever notes they have. And we'll be trying to chase and get those together. Yes. So otherwise, let's, those of us who are present at the launch of Sue Big Oil this morning, they did a fun thing. So I want everyone to unmute yourselves right across the board, open up your cameras if you're, and just share what do we have to do to make this thing work? Just call out whatever you want. Just, let it rip.
You're amazing.
More of the same.
More of the same, yes.
Awesome.
Action.
Oh my gosh. Community.
There you go,
folks. Listen to each other.
Listen to each other.
That didn't work today.
And it's fracked fossil gas. Okay, look, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you so much for participating.
Thanks, guys.
We'll be back in touch.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Thanks.